Hi and welcome to Eldar Army. This episode is all about, as you can see, striking scorpions. I've been asked for this review for some time, and striking scorpions was a review that I didn't know quite how to take. They do have a role in 40k. I personally quite struggle with how to use them. Haven't actually taken them in 7th myself yet. Oh no, that's not true. I did an Apocalypse game once with them. I do like them. I think I'm probably they're one of my aspects that I deeply want to make them work. So they're not a bad unit per se, but they struggle for the transport choices. So without further ado, let's try and get the most bang for our bucks out of these striking scorpions. If you've got the models and you play 7th edition 40k, this video will help you get the most bang for your buck out of these guys. So, without further ado, let's go into the history of the model. As you can see here, I've got two. I've actually got 5 of them floating around on the table with me. They're all the same. These are 25-year-old models. These came out in 1991. 1991 Rogue Trader. And they came out actually in White Dwarf 124, 127. And they are very, very good looking models even then. They haven't changed a huge amount. They were metal. They came in packs of 5, so they were a pretty good bargain back then in blister packs. I think they were like £3.99 for 5 or something like that. And yeah, they were really good to play with. I really enjoyed them. These were actually my first ever Aspect Warriors, and these are the ones. They're my first Aspect Warriors that I ever painted. I think I was 15 when I painted these. They don't look too bad even now. And they are, I've used them in plenty of games in the years that I've had them. Okay. After that, in 1998, they got a rehash. Okay, so I'll show you these. These are my least attractive Aspect Warrior models. I can see what they were trying to do. I can see where they were going with the model. Stay there, Mr. Scorpion Claw. I can see what they were attempting to do. But they have this bulbous scorpion's head, which I understand what they were trying to do with that. I'm trying to show you, not getting my hand in the way. Good poses, actually, I won't lie to you. Quite good poses, probably the best poses. Very sort of martial art sort of. They're obviously trying really hard to capture the ethos of a scorpion, and in that sense, the movement and the motion is actually very, very good. But it's the hats that do it for me. They're just not really my cup of tea. So I've also got the Exarch, and bizarrely, he's still in his box. I don't know if you can see that, but he's got his scorpion's claw in there somewhere, and he is a beast. But like I say, his hat. It's just a bit too daft, really. It was a shame because I think the models were really good. Other than that, and then in 2005, the metal editions came out. This is really, really good quality stuff. Now, these are actually the best sculpts, I think. I like that when the best work is the most recent. That's not always true in the Eldar aspect changes that have happened, but these are definitely the best sculpts of the lot for me. I love the way they look like predators with the dreadlocks at the back, and they're a little bit bigger and they just look more imposing, and they do look the business. They are the dreadlock murderers, which I love. And then in 2011 they came out as Finecast, which, if you watch my videos, I'm not a big fan of Finecast, so I try to avoid it. So for me, the heyday was probably back when they made them in 2005, which is a good 11 years ago now for these models. Okay, so let's go into the pros and the cons. As you can see, Scorpions have, been part of 40k for some time, and they've had their good days and their bads. I think the Eldar armies themselves are kind of like stuck for good close combat troops. I think Wraithblades are a bit underwhelming. They can be okay. I think Banshees are underwhelming. I think Shining Spears, which could be considered a close combat troop, are underwhelming. I think Harlequins are okay, pretty good. I think Dark Eldar are pretty good. And what do they have going for them? Well, they have the transports. So Eldar lack a transport. So we're going to go through the pros and the cons, but I want you to understand that it's the mechanics of 40k that are kind of the problem here. The only real 2 units in the 40k universe that Eldar can rely on in close combat are Wraith Lords and Wraith Knights. And actually Wraith Knights are superb at it. And very often I would say that Wraith Knights are actually your close combat go-to solution. Having said that, if you've got Striking Scorpions, you want to use them, then you've got a problem if you don't use them properly. So let's go through some of the pros. So first of all, as a pro, it's strength 4. Second of all, they get 4 attacks effectively because they have initiative 10 poison attack, which is automatic hit. That's massive. It's a bit like Hammer of Rat every turn, and it's a 4 up wound, no matter what the toughness is. It's pretty good. It's only against giant monsters creatures that that becomes less true because it becomes a 6. But this guy here, Crandorus, he can do his 2 and a 4 up, so even he can take on pretty mean targets. So the Mandi Blaster's a good attack. It'll get you some wounds. Obviously they've got to save, but poor save troops will struggle. Like orcs will struggle with that. I mean, they're great orc killing machines, to be honest, because they are perfect for killing orcs because they get rid of the t-shirt saves. I mean, their swords are only AP 6, but against certain armies, that's really good. And you know, so they can put the wounds onto units at a high initiative. But the main pros for this Striking Scorpion is the Scorpion's Claw. If you don't take the Scorpion's Claw, you're not doing it right. So the minimum way you should take these, and I know that we'll go through the build later, but you cannot justify taking these without the Scorpion's Claw. Maybe for 80 points, maybe a stealth, shrouded, infiltrated, sit somewhere really weird till the end of the game type unit, but really that's stretching it. I think you really need to take them from the Scorpion's Claw for 2 reasons. One, it's strength 6 AP2 and it hits at normal initiative, which is great, but also he has a really good skill in the challenge, which means that he gets an extra attack for every step higher initiative of the opponent that he is. And so if you can manipulate initiative either through Jane Zar's War Shout or through some psychic shenanigans or various things, then there are plenty of things in the game that can manipulate initiative, and they're usually quite subtle. Watch out for them because they massively improve his attacks. If Jane Zar was with him, he would get his 3 base attacks. If he's charged, that would be an extra 1. This is just with his Power Claw. And if he was strength 6, he may get even, if she's dropped their initiative to 1 with her War Cry, that would be how many attacks he gets. That's 5 extra attacks. That's all strength 6. That's crazy. If you take Crandorus, he also, not that you would take Crandorus at the same time, but potentially you could, if you were absolutely mental for him. He also gives you reroll 1s to wound, which is great. It's great. I think it affects Mandi Blasters as well, from what I can see. And considering his own Mandi Blaster attack fails to wound on a 1, that means that potentially that's a really good weapon because he basically rerolls his own. I think it just says failed to wound rolls, and it does say wounds on a 4+. So I think his War Shout, or whatever it's called, his Warlord trait, does give him rerolls to 1 on wounds for the Mandi Blasters. So what do you do with them? Well, to make the most of them, I would probably avoid taking a Wave Serpent. Now, there are 2 ways of doing them. So split down the middle. You can either go Wave Serpent for the infiltrated Wave Serpent, for whatever that might give you, because their infiltrate carries on to their Wave Serpent. So if you want to infiltrate a Wave Serpent, now you can. But it's expensive. The second way is they're probably the only aspect, maybe Dark Reapers as well, and obviously Shining Spears, but they've got their own bikes, and also Warp Spiders and Swooping Hawks because of their inherent transport element of their aspect. But they're the only aspect that doesn't really need transport. okay? Why? Because you can infiltrate them, you can outflank them, they have stealth, they have shrouding, so you can put them in a forest in the middle of nowhere and they're going to have a 2-up cover save, they're going to have a 3-up armour save. They're actually very survivable by Eldar standards. Toughness 3 is rubbish, but they get a 3-up armour save when they don't, for anything that ignores cover, and their 2-up save should do well if you take them in large numbers. So what you do, instead of taking a Wave Serpent, you take, say, 8 to 10 of these, and you infiltrate them. And you place them in a forest or in a building, and you basically just on ruins, and you just leave them there. Now, why would you do that? There's 2 sides to this story, by the way, so we'll go through the most one, which is the offensive side to it. You're doing it to get him into combat, get his strength 6 attacks enabled. They're also good against hordes. They can actually kill and wipe down hordes. Against horde armies that they're outnumbered by, they can do reasonably well. I would say gaunts, stuff like that. Yeah, they might pull it off at a ratio of maybe 2 to 1, maybe even 3 to 1 if you're lucky, which is for Eldar pretty good. But anything above a gaunt or an Imperial Guardsman, you're kind of in, and maybe orcs, your cheapest chips orcs, your bottom feeding orcs, not your specific ones for close combat. I mean, all orcs are good at close combat, but maybe they get away with that as well. Sisters of Battle, not too bad because they're only toughness 3, so that helps. But when you get into your Space Marines, they're only really good in equal numbers against Space Marines, and try to avoid Assault Marines. You need to really outnumber the Assault Marines if they're going to do any good against Assault Marines. So for all those reasons, and offensively, you've got to pick your targets, but you can place them on the board where you want, and then they're very vulnerable to Overwatch. So you might want to put some Banshees near them, and then you've got a problem because how do you get the Banshees there? So there's all sorts of things inside the problems for using them. But in theory, offensively, they can just about pull it off. They also get Karandras. Karandras is a great asset. He is really, really quite special. He gives them automatic, they don't have to roll for reserves on turn 2. He gives them phenomenal buffs in terms of his strength 8 wallops that he just carries around. Plus, their wounds, their ablative wounds, keep him alive. So if you did take Karandras, you'd be mad not to take him in a squad of Striking Scorpions, because he can then infiltrate with his stealth and his shrouding and his 2-up normal save, and he's going to get a charge on turn 2 unless they've moved their men away or something. So they're kind of good offensively in that sense. They don't need to transport to do their job, unlike Banshees, and they can just about get away with it. So that's one of the pros. If you do take them on foot, which I would recommend doing because it just brings the points down and get more bodies basically, and you use them a different way, is you put them in the backfield and you're using them for countering drop pods, you're using them for countering deep striking units, you're using them for kicking stuff off. They're a counter to other people's counters. So what, a lot of Death Watch put their drop pod right on the back of your lines and dump a lot of frag launchers, and you need to get something to clear them out of the objective, so you clear them out with these guys. They will be able to clear stuff off objectives. They'll struggle with drop pods themselves because they haven't got the real tint. He can only wound them on a 6 himself. The main purpose of these guys then is to be used in the backfield role, countering other people's counters, but their range is not great. So you have to put them intelligently and use the shrouding and the stealth to keep them alive, or use them offensively. Maybe putting Karandras in there just to tank it. I mean, it's expensive, but he's not that much more than a Wave Serpent, not 50 points more than a Wave Serpent, and he's probably worth it. He's probably worth it for the extra stuff he gives with the outflank and stuff. Outflank's a bit iffy for me, because they still get the stealth and shrouding, I believe, so they could outflank into a forest, which means they're not going to hit until turn 3. Maybe, might be your cup of tea. Personally, I think to infiltrate him and just get him to just duff people up as soon as possible. If they're shooting these guys, they're going to survive quite well by Eldar standards. They're not going to be shooting the rest of your army. So all in all, these are quite a lot of pros. So they get high number of strength 4 attacks. They get this special extra attack, which effectively is like an everlasting hammer of wrath that never disappears, which is like a poison attack, like a 4-up poison attack as well, which is kind of good. So it's regardless of toughness. And they get the normal strength 4. They get obviously quite a lot of attacks. They get 3 attacks in the charge, and And yeah, I think overall there's a lot of good things to say about them. What I would say as well is if you do decide you're playing a game which is much more mobile version of the game, for example, low points, you might want to take a squad of 5 just to get the Wave Serpent infiltrated in. Now you might think, why would I do that? For 220, 210 points, you could have a Wave Serpent and these guys infiltrated. You could then take these out of the transport and put them in cover, and then they go into ground or whatever, like a 2-up cover saving, because they've still got their stealth, they've still got their shrouding, because they haven't shot yet, and then you can bomb about with your Wave Serpent and cause some sort of backline damage. Quite useful against armies that don't deploy, like null deploy, potentially. Or units that have hung really far back, and maybe, I don't know, Sisters of Battle, I know they're getting changed, but Sisters of Battles have got those rhinos at the back that fire those accordion things. Actually, they're quite devastating. They sit at the back and they're only like AV-10 at the back, so a Wave Serpent could easily smash them. Plus, they've got the bow shield, which ignores cover. So, a Wave Serpent infiltrated actually is not bad. It's not bad for your points. So, there are your 3 ways you can do Wave Serpent. You can do defensive on foot, and you can do offensive on foot. But I would say for offensive on foot, you need to consider Corundrus, because even though it's expensive, he's a beast. Other than that, let's go into the cons. Well, the cons are basically the lack of transport. It's an open-topped assault transport. Without an assault transport, their utility is massively diminished. They don't have the speed buffs that Banshees have. They don't have the Overwatch mitigation that Banshees have. And actually, if I think in some weird way they could be combined in the sense of how they're delivered, then Banshees and Scorpions would be really, really good. So if you had a Dark Eldar, whatever they call that assault transport that Dark Eldar use, with enough room for 10, you could put 5 of these on and 5 Banshees on. They'd actually do really, really well, because the assault would be mitigated on Overwatch. They'd have an initiative debuff. They'd have to deal with his strength 6 attacks, so they wouldn't have Overwatch on them and everything. So actually they work really well with Banshees. And sometimes you have missions where you hold the centre of the board, or you're playing some sort of house rules according to you've deployed in the middle, they have to deploy on the edge of the board, in the board, and they surround you. Those kind of games where you can rely on them being in conjunction with Banshees, I think they're actually really, really good. I think Banshees and these probably synchronise and actually massively improve each other. And with Banshees, they do their job well. The problem is the delivery systems are all different. There's no go-to delivery system for them to put them in combat alongside their best cousins. And so, in an ideal world, the cheapest one of these with an XR, he's still rocking at 40 points of upgrade, so he's not going to be cheap. So 120 points gets you 4 or 5 of these. If you did the same again and put them maybe in a Venom type thing, then that could be pretty good. The problem is you can't get them. You can't get the transports. So it's awkward. But that's 40k. So getting into close combat reliably is hard. These guys don't really have tools to get into combat really well. They tend to have to sit and pounce, which is fine, except that if you don't know for sure what your enemy's going to do, they can, so you can exert some sort of subtle pressures. They're all right. They're very survivable, but overall, they're only toughness 3. Their ignores cover won't work against all weapons, and yeah, they have to rely on the opponent letting them function to some degree, because you can't use their movement because they just don't have enough of it. Their movement's not terrible, but it's not brilliant. And I think Baharov as well, they kind of could conceivably do well with Baharov. They also work with Jane's Eye quite well. Baharov will give them hit and run. I don't believe they've got hit and run. It might be wrong, but I don't think they do. But also I think his blind affects initiative. So Baharov's blind would affect initiative, which means that it would then, and his initiative's I think higher than the Exarch. I think his initiative 7. So he would get hit before the Exarch, which meant it would be potentially blinding the opponents with his sword, which means initiative goes down on the challenge, and you can see where this is going. So, it potentially works quite well with Baharov as well, which is interesting. But anyway, now we'll go into the builds. Okay, build 1 is take 9. Take 9. Upgrade 1 to an Exarch. So 9 gets you to, I think it's 80 plus, so it's 144. 9 gives you 144 points, 10 for the Exarch, so that's 154, and then 30 for his Scorp's Claw, so that's 184. You take 9 because I think you need the wounds. You could take 10 if you want, you know, nothing wrong with that. That would bring the points up to a clean 200, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. But anywhere between 8 and 10 of these guys, and their job is either offensive or defensive, like we said, on foot, infiltrated. I wouldn't bother with outflank because of the close combat, lack of being able to use their close combat in the first turn that they arrive. And basically just rely on the numbers to get him into combat and start tin opening stuff. I mean, to give you an idea of how many attacks this is, there's in the charge there's 30 attacks there, plus his another one, so 31, plus the shots, so that's 10 shots on the way in, plus 30. I think he's assault 1. It might be assault 2 actually. Come to think of it, he's gone. Okay, well, let's say it's assault 1. So there's 10 shots of strength 4, plus which you're definitely going to get because you're in charge range by default because you're 12 inches. So, yeah, if you know, what would they do to a unit of 10 Marines? Which is, you know, they're comparable in cost too. So so they get 11 shots. Let's just do the numbers. Let's say that we've taken them as a battle host, which is fine because you might well do that. So we said, okay, so they hit on anything but 1s because I would always take ballistic skill 5, and then you're wounding Marines on 4s with pseudo-ends. Okay, so no pseudo-ends, and then but 1, 2, 3, 4 wounds. That's not brilliant, but better than nothing. 4 saves for the Marines. This is 10 Marines we're going to pretend we're fighting. So there's 1 Marine dead in the shooting. Then they charge in, they get overwatched. I won't bother with the overwatch, but that's 20 shots rapid fire. So you probably get 4 in, and then there would be 3 wounds, and then you probably get 1 save. So 1 will drop probably by rapid fire. Let's take 1 off the back. And then they're in, and the Scorpion, he would get an extra 2 attacks for his initiative, and then he would get 4 attacks for the charge, 2 base plus 1 for the charge, 1 for extra weapon. So that's 6 attacks. Let's assume he's just challenging the sergeant. The sergeant says yeah, because he's a bit daft. Okay, so he hits on, because he's an extra weapon skill, he hits on 3s. So we've got 5 hits, which is not unusual. And then he kills on 2s. Okay, so that's 4 dead Marines. Okay. Oh, and I forgot the Handy Blaster. 4 dead Marines, so count that, so that's still 5. So 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's 10. Mandy Blaster. Okay, so that's a real ton of wounds. That's done well. So we've got 5 bang on average, actually. So that's well, okay. And then you want to get, obviously 3s so they're all saved. That's okay, so didn't do anything. So he's killed 4 on his own, plus the 1 that got shot on the way in. And then the other guys, and they're initiative 5, so they do go first. So there's 20. So this is with 8 guys remaining. That's 3 attacks each. So that's 24 attacks. So I'll just do this quickly. I'm trying to just give you an idea of what you to expect, you know, with this amount of against 10 Marines, which is a fairly standard metric. So they hit on 4s. Unless you check the weapon skill upgrade, which I wouldn't have done. So, because I always think 4s is better than nothing. So that, and then 4 more for the extra attacks that we didn't have. That's actually a really good roll. That's more like it. Right, so that's the number of, and then the wound on 4s. Another good roll. Very good roll, actually. And then this one he saves. So there's 5 Marines left in our little theory battle. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dead Marines. So they're all dead. So they've wiped a tactical squad out before they could return and fight any hits. Okay. Now that was exceptionally good, but with the amount of attacks they get plus the shot, remember they get the shot on the way in, which is strength 4. So actually they've got 5 attacks each on the way in, I believe. 1 for the shot, 1 for the Mandate Blaster, 3 for the combat, plus whatever he gets. So they're not bad, okay? But getting them in combat obviously difficult, but they can potentially do that if they're in cover, especially if they've got, you know, the infiltrate has got them near enough. They should be able to get near something. So they can cause damage. Right, so build 2 is a defensive investment. So what you're doing is you're castling up at the back of your field, and you're still taking the Scorp's Claw. So that's 80 points plus 4, so it's 120 points. It's expensive for what it is. You need to put them in a forest and just keep them there. Somewhere probably equidistant from at least 2 objective markers that you need to secure. And their job is going to be to wipe out the Marines that they see there. They won't be acting on their own. They'll be probably acting in concert and support with maybe some jet bikes that have swapped, maybe a squad of jet bikes has turned around to soften them up first, like most of the Eldar troops. But they're good finishers, and I think you know, if you can keep them out of harm's way, move them across the board. Remember that they keep their stealth and shouting even in the open. So potentially you can do, you know, you might even want to go to ground and stuff. So that at night fighting as well, potentially in the first turn, causes a bit of a bonus to that. So they're actually not too bad, even in the open. But I would say, yeah, your way you're doing that is trying to keep your points down. Also, in low-cost games, it's actually a cheap way of getting a big, large amount of hits. So if you're against like Necrons, and you know they're initiative 2, then and you're in a small points game, totally valid way of doing it, because he will get a huge number of hits. He'll get 4 plus 4, 5, you know, potentially 4 plus 4, you know, so it's 8 attacks at strength 6 AP2. He's going to start ripping stuff apart. So it's his special ability that's really quite good. And you basically keep them as spare wounds. So this is cheap, it works. You could put it in transport if you want. It's not a bad way of doing it. In conclusion then, do Striking Scorpions have a place in 40k? I think so. I really do. I think they are really, really good. I think if you put Karandras with them, they become, he's the man for the job. You know, he will pull off amazing tricks for you, very expensive, but they're the delivery system for him. So they work as his delivery boat. The Exarch is a mean son of a gun. He's really nifty. He's probably the best sergeant in close combat you could probably have in 40k, really. I mean, if he was strength 4, it would be broken, you know. So I like him. I think they're a good unit. The only problems are the mechanics of getting them in combat, but they have the infiltrate and shrouding and stealth, which is really, really good. Gives them a massive chance of pulling that off. The problem is they're not very mobile for Eldar, and they're quite easy to counter by just moving away. The other problem is that they are not cheap if you take them with Karandras at all. They're not, his Scorpion's Claws, very expensive, and they are basic. That's 6 wounds. Just without him there, that's 6 wounds. You know, so you have to take them in numbers, which brings the points cost up. But I think in sheer maths terms, if they can get in combat on their terms, they are deadly. It's just, I suppose, waiting for the right chance to pounce. I know that's a bit cryptic, being that they're called Striking Scorpions, but they really are meant to strike and wait, and that can be their problem. So, but then again, they're exercising a threat bubble, which could be quite large. So they sit, they wait. If you come too near them, they strike you and they rip you to bits. That's probably the right way to play them. To take out, they're toughness 3. It's just volume of shots and whittle them down by the failed saves. Ignores cover, will kill them. Psychic Shriek, they won't like that. Stuff like that. So overall, I think good. I wouldn't give them a score because I don't do scores anymore, because this is more for people using them. But I think they're probably a good B- or C+, probably a C+. And I do think they're a good unit. I do like them. I personally rate them. Also, this is a 7th edition review, so if you're watching this in 8th edition and you want to see, look down below, because there'll be a link to a 7th edition, an 8th edition review of this. I'm going to quickly do some 8th edition updates when the updates come. Also, please like and subscribe if you do like this video. And yeah, thanks for watching.